Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the best multifamily podcast ever. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Jeff Lerman, attorney out in the Bay Area. Jeff, I have a daughter that goes to University of San Francisco. And
come out to visit.
I do on occasion, but man, let me tell you, I think I lost her. I think she's not coming back.
Yeah.
I know, she just raves over San Francisco.
Well, there's a real chance of that. I went undergrad to Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and I'm from Los Angeles, and I didn't stay all the way, but I did that. I went down back to LA for law school, and then, I brought my bride up here about 25 years ago, and that's how it goes.
And never look back. And what we say about UC Berkeley, that's for people that can't get into Boston College. So just to keep it real. So, I got to tell you.
Keep telling yourself that.
I say that about everything. Harvard, Yale, whatever it is.
Right.
That's what it is. Okay. I got to tell you, for everybody listening, Jeff, I had invited Jeff. I did a one day, or actually it was like a 2 or 3 day down in LA. Good crowd. And I asked Jeff, because I was sick of talking probably by the second or third day, to come down and do a presentation for everyone. And let me tell you, I still look back on that thing. I wish we had taped it, because that was so good, because you didn't see everything that I had talked about for the previous 2 days. And then you walk into the room, you and I it was totally unscripted, and you just confirmed everything I had said for the last 2 days.
Speaking of unscripted, what teed that part off was you were talking about a particular software program that I know you recommend.
Yep.
And you were saying, well, gee, I forget, you didn't have an actual example to show.
Yeah.
You were talking about it. And I said, well, Charlie, I use that same software, and I used it for my last deal. And then I got up and I just unfolded that on the PowerPoint, and then we had some good time there.
Everybody looked at it and said, like, wow, that's exactly what I've been talking about all weekend long. And the nice thing about it, Jeff, and this is something that we're going to get into, you actually used it to promote, not even to promote, but just to show that deal that you did in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where was that?
I used that to raise all the money for that deal.
Yeah, and because that software can do that for you.
Yeah.
And where was that deal in Tennessee?
That was in Nashville.
It was. Where in Nashville? Because I'm kind of a homie now in Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my wife actually stays down there during the week. She's building a dental dental practice management company down in Nashville.
Nashville's a great town. It is the area. It's only about 15-minute drive from downtown. The area is called Hermitage, and actually that was the name of the property, Hermitage.
Hermitage. Okay. You know what? Now, where does it stand now? Do you still own it?
No, we sold it. We sold it after a couple of years, and we made a profit on that of about over 100%.
Excellent. Isn't that great? Now, how did you, in a short period of time, how did you realize that profit? Did you drive the NOI, value add? What was your strategy? Just hit the market right?
I think it was primarily hitting a great market at the right time. We actually, to say how crazy it was, we had the loan we had on it had a significant defeasance if you a prepayment penalty, and the guy that bought it, he could have assumed the loan, but because the market was better, he said it made more sense for him just to get a brand new loan, and he went ahead and paid the defeasance on top of paying whatever he was paying us for the property.
I have never heard that happening.
I know. It not only blew us away, we were using a great broker to market the property, and he couldn't believe it either. But it was. And the property itself was, it was in a good, it was in a B location. It wasn't a bad location, but it was an older property, a typical vanilla deal, right? Value add, and we had these value add plans, and we never had to do it because just by using good property management, we were able to get the rents where we wanted to get them, and we a broker put out to market, and within a couple months we had it sold for a lot more than we expected to.
All right, Jeff,
So,
let me ask you this question. Would you invest in Nashville right now?
it's I think Nashville will it's a great market, but it's like a lot of markets that are going through the cycle. It is now at the point where it's so hard to find anything where the numbers make sense. It's a different market. I bought that deal in 2014. We sold it in 2016, at the end of 2016. So it's a very different market 5 years after, So, yeah, I mean, if you can find anything that makes sense, I think Nashville is a world-class city, and it's got good, all the right things are in place, but it's overheated.
Yeah, exactly. It's just too hot to touch right now in such a small area. And even some of the other areas in Tennessee. Tennessee's a great state. Chattanooga, Knoxville. I mean, there's a lot of good little towns out there, but it's just finding the deals because everybody's running down there right now.
Yeah, we exchanged from that deal into another deal in Chattanooga.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, and Chattanooga's a nice market, nice sub-market, and we have been getting a lot of unsolicited calls for that, and that market's proven to be a good market. That market is, I think, that market is today where I think Nashville was 5 years ago in terms of, Volkswagen's down there, Amazon's down there. Volkswagen has just announced a couple months ago that they were going to build their brand new SUV at the plant down there. So, Chattanooga years ago committed to having the fastest internet in the country, and they do, and they are attracting tons of tech. So
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
The
thing about Tennessee, though, for your listeners, you got to be careful. And this is coming from a guy in California that is one of the most heavily taxed states. Tennessee has a very significant franchise and excise tax. And when you are crunching your numbers, you need to make sure that you know what the franchise and excise tax is going to be and factor that into your analysis to make sure that you're not going to be surprised by that.
Isn't that interesting? These are the types of things you never think about when you're looking at the property. And of course, the broker will tell you. Geez, that's here you are, Tennessee, like no state income tax, great place to go retire, what have you. Every time somebody that's in the know talks about Tennessee, there's always a caveat like that, like the franchise tax. But one of my students is a former NHL hockey player, and in Tennessee, in Nashville, they have an entertainment tax, because they have all the entertainers, they got to pay a tax, and they had a joke in the NHL that because of the entertainment tax, you play your first 4 games in Nashville for free. You don't make a dime because you got to pay that entertainment tax.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's nuts.
But the other cool thing about Tennessee is that, especially timely given where we are with climate change, main reason we go to Tennessee is to get better numbers than in markets like San Francisco, right? Yeah. California.
Yeah.
And Tennessee, if you want to go to a market like that, that is one of even with all the bad weather we've been having, we have not, there's been rain, but no snow, or very, very light snow. So none of if you're going to go into some of these other markets that are outside where, if you don't, if you're not prepared to own a property that's got severe weather, that could be an issue, and it's something that you're not accustomed to. But Tennessee has been, especially Chattanooga, more than Nashville. Actually, the weather in Tennessee in Chattanooga has been kind to us for the last few years. So it's everybody should check out Chattanooga. I think it's I think it's still an emerging market.
Okay, well, hold on a second there, because you seem to have the Midas touch, and I'm going to pick your brain here for a moment. You picked Nashville when it was up and coming. You got out of Nashville when it hit the peak. You got into Chattanooga, which is probably the next up and coming town down there in the southeast quadrant. And so, you'll probably get out at the right time. Jeff Lerman, where would you go next?
Well, I don't have another sub-market that is in my specifically on my radar. I will tell you that because I, like you, am a full-time practicing lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
I find not, I was going to say most. Well, it is most. Most of the deals I find through the topic that we're going to be talking about today, joint ventures.
Okay.
So I went to your thing, and I go to I speak at investor groups around the country, and I go there primarily, it's nice for the law practice to get my name out there, but I do it actually more to meet investors who are looking for joint venture partners, because that's how I get deal flow. I don't have the time to prospect. I don't have the time to do what others do who do real estate full time, to look at 100 deals to find the one that makes sense. So, if I can go and meet somebody who's already got a deal that they thought was good enough to get to the point that they've got it under contract and they need money, that has been a way for me to find a deal. We ended up in Chattanooga because my partner in the Nashville deal turned me on to Chattanooga, and so that's how I ended up. And that's the way things happen, right? You start someplace, but then it's you one thing leads to another. Not because I had no idea that Chattanooga wasn't even on my radar, but my partner who lives in Nashville said Chattanooga is where you got to be.
He's right. He's right. That's exactly right. So, good for you, man. Now let's talk about that, the JV part of it, because for those of you that don't know Jeff, you got to track him down. You got to find him on LinkedIn. You got to sign up for his group on LinkedIn, and then you're going to start, get on his mailing list, because Jeff puts on a nice conference every year that on this particular topic. So let's talk about it, Jeff. You are the master of joint venturing. I don't know how it involves your legal practice or what you do in that regard, but you have a forum on LinkedIn, brilliantly so, where you bring these people in and you start putting together JVs or have the opportunity to put together JVs with them. So give us the primer on it, and then give us some detail. Like how can we benefit from that?
Sure. Yeah. By the way, the LinkedIn group is called the Real Estate Joint Venture Matching Group, and the subtitle is "Find a Joint Venture Partner Here."
Yeah. Say that one more time again, because it's a long name, and you got to get it right on LinkedIn to find it. So say it one more time.
Real Estate Joint Venture Matching Group.
Yeah.
Dash find a JV partner here, and the genesis of it was really just more the investor in me looking for some way that we could increase our deal flow. And I thought that if I could create this group and be the manager of the group, number one, every time somebody put a post, I get an email, so I see it immediately. And I figure if somebody joins the group and posts a deal, that would be somebody who might be worth talking to. So yeah, you're kind of like Mark. There's over 5,000 members in it. It's growing all the time. So and join it. It's obviously free. And
you're kind of like the Mark Zuckerberg trying to find a date. Creating Facebook. You went out and created this forum on your own, so that you could get a look at all the prettiest girls first.
Exactly. So joint venture. So here's why I'm so passionate about this, and I have devoted so many resources, mental and every other type of resource to it. In no particular order. First of all, I think this strategy of joint ventures is probably the single. If you said, Jeff, if you called me and said, I want you to share with my members clients, the people that are listening to this, my listeners, the single most impactful strategy you can to succeed in real estate. I would say that this would be it, and it doesn't make a difference if you're a newbie or if you've been doing this your entire life. This is a strategy that can work, does work for any level, and it's a strategy that if you're not currently using it or not using it as much as you should be using it more. And the secondary genesis and the impetus for me to do this was about 8 years ago. I'm a litigator as well as a transactional lawyer. And for your listeners, we represent clients all around the country transactionally, but only in California for litigation.
That's what you get when you live down the street from a fire station.
Yeah. And I was representing a client in a partner dispute, a joint venture dispute. He was partners with somebody in 3 different deals over a period of 10 years. And the partner disputes can be very expensive. This lasted for a couple of years, and it costs a lot in terms of legal fees and consultants and experts fees. And when you represent a client in a litigation, you get to know them on a very intimate level, and you understand who they're. And this is a very smart, successful guy, and the experience for him was so difficult, psychologically, emotionally, economically, and I really felt like this was something that people and the kicker, and this is true of every partner dispute we've handled, it could have been avoided if the agreement between him and his partner had been drafted differently at the beginning. And so I felt like Paul Revere, who just saw the British coming and wanted to run back to town, drive back to town and tell other investors, it doesn't have to be like this. If you understand what to do in order to set up a joint venture correctly in the first place, you can drastically reduce the risk of ever being in a partner dispute. And so as a result, I came up with this topic, and I've been going around the country on radio, podcasts, TV, webinars, seminars, teaching it, because I looked around to see if anybody else was really talking about it at the level that I'm talking about it, and nobody was.
No.
So that's why I'm passionate about it, and I do believe everything, like I say, this is I think it's the cheapest, easiest, fastest, and safest way to do deals with other people's money.
Okay. And, let me tell you something. You're preaching to the choir here, because all the bad deals I've been involved with have been because of bad partners. And, let me ask you something. And I'm an attorney, and we drafted the documents correctly, but there's something there. There are also some intangibles as well in partnerships. Now, in the situation with your client, did they have an attorney draft their original documents?
That's a great question. The answer is yes and no. It's a yes with a qualifier. Okay. So, and I'll tell you, the issue boiled down to one issue, and that was that in any partnership, this is a very common issue. Okay, you got 2 people, 2 or more people, doesn't make a difference in a partnership, and they say, okay, we're 50-50, and they start out 50-50 in terms of the contribution. But at some point during the course of their relationship, my client ended up putting in more money than the other guy, because the other guy didn't have enough money when the partnership needed it. And so my guy put more money into the deal. And then after 10 years, the other guy had never matched his contribution. So the dispute was, should the additional money that he put in be treated as a capital contribution, or was it a loan? And the difference between that treatment would have an impact on the partner split. If you and I are 50-50, but over time you end up putting in, so much more money than I originally did, so now you feel you're entitled to 80%, and I should get 20%. We're going to have a dispute, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So I mean, okay, it probably wasn't an LLC. Oh, go ahead. You want to finish?
It was an LLC, but
Okay.
to finish the answer to your question.
Yeah.
So I went and looked at the operating agreement. Most operating agreements would address this issue of cash calls.
Cash calls and exactly.
And
So
dilution. Yeah.
right.
This operating agreement, which we did not draft, and it was because the agreement, yes, was drafted by a lawyer. It was drafted by my client's estate planning lawyer, who this was something that this lawyer did not do very much of, and he was either trying to help out his client or dabbling or whatever. So it's super important when you, and I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you've seen it too with all the people, all the investors you've seen. Can't believe how many times I see people who are already doing business with either an agreement, that back of the napkin thing they did on their own, or even not even worse, but worse. They go online and download some form they found online, and they say, okay, we'll just use this form. This is something that I'm telling all your listeners. If you get into a real estate joint venture partner dispute, it is not unusual for your legal fees, consultants fees, and expert witness fees to get into 7 figures. It's not. And it's because when you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar asset like apartments, the dispute over profits can be 7 figures. And so this is something where you're being penny wise and pound foolish to the nth degree to try to save a couple bucks and not go and use a lawyer who does this and focuses on this type of agreement. And really, not only the agreement, but one of the other things that we do is I insist on meeting with, if I'm going to draft an agreement for you and somebody else, I'll say, let's meet in person, or like we're doing right now in a video call. And we have, as part of our setup, we have a 17-point questionnaire that we talk about all the hard topics. And what we do is, as part of setting it up right, is I ask all the hard questions, and we talk about it real time, and I observe how these people are communicating. And I've told clients that in a meeting before, I said, when we got to this issue, you guys seem to be talking past each other, and you guys maybe should rethink if this is actually going to be a good relationship for you guys. And that's the kind of thing that you mentioned, that when you're in it, you're too close. You're too close to it to be objective or to maybe ask the difficult questions. I'm not. And so it is important. I firmly believe that when there are problems in a partnership arrangement, there are warning signs from the beginning.
Okay, perfect. Because that was what I was going to ask about the intangibles, where, in this particular case, it was cash. One person put in more cash than the other person. But in other cases, it's where they start off as 50-50, but then you find out one guy's doing all the work and the other guy's already, moved on. He's doing something different. How do you resolve that situation? A lot of times these partners don't even talk about that. They think, oh, everything's going to be great. We'll just, I like him, he likes me, everything's going to be fine. Nah. And that was, let me just say as a footnote before you answer, that's what destroyed our partnerships.
Right.
Was we stayed in the game. When the going got tough, we stayed in the game. The people who are our partners were gone.
Right.
When they didn't see the returns coming back that they thought they were going to get, they were gone. And part of the solution, I think, is having a vesting schedule for your membership interest, as opposed to just getting everything on day one. But what happened in your situation? I mean,
a similar answer. Especially when it comes to these joint venture arrangements, the devil's in the details. Mm-hmm. And so it is important to include, and we do this as part of our setup, a detailed description of who's going to do what in the deal. And you do that, number one, to manage expectations. Yeah. And number two, to create a basis for you if they are not honoring their obligation under the agreement that they said that they are going to do X, whatever X happens to be. If they're the ones who are going to, do property management, or they're the ones that are going to
file the taxes, or
whatever.
Yeah.
So that becomes part of a condition, if you will, to their being entitled to their compensation. Then, if I can't keep you out of a dispute, at least I can position you better in that dispute to prevail when the other party breaches. We can set up an agreement. I can't control whether people breach or not, but what I could do is set the table right from the beginning so everybody understands what the rules of the game are. And if there's going to be a problem, at least deal with those up front. So, it's.
You remember Al Aiello?
Who?
Al Aiello, Aiello.
I remember the name, but I don't remember.
He passed away a couple of years back. He was a CPA, but he had the same type of thing. And I'll tell you something. He was selling a program to, get you up and running, and it came with an operating agreement. And Jeff, let me just tell you, it was an operating agreement written obviously by an accountant and not by a lawyer, because it was tough to follow. It was tough, but he had one thing in it that you're talking about that I thought was pretty clever, and it might, I'm not so sure how many multifamily properties he owned and operated, but he actually had about 5 pages of tasks, and where everybody gets assigned a task, and it's assigned like a value. And that's how you could really sit down. And I'll tell you something, that type of information at the beginning of a partnership, sitting around a table with an attorney and going through each one of the steps, saying who's going to do what, who's going to do, because you never look at this, at what it takes to really run a property on a day-to-day basis until you sit down and look at 5 pages of tasks.
Well, not only that, but there is a tendency at the beginning of a joint venture relationship because in theory, your relationship with your partner is probably never going to be as good as that at the beginning, right?
Honeymoon.
And so there's a tendency at the beginning for each of the members, each of the partners, to be nice, to be generous, to be a good guy, to say, yeah, you know what, don't worry about it. I've seen this happen, and I have to stop and I say, no, don't do that. He says, don't worry, I'll handle the day-to-day management. Don't worry about it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it anyway. So I may even if I wasn't getting paid, I'd do it. Your biggest, your most precious asset is your time. And so when somebody says that, or somebody who happens to be a broker and says, you know what, don't worry, I'll get the loan. You don't have to be involved in that. Everything's going to take time, and there should at least be a conversation where you discuss, or as a lawyer, you get the same thing I do. Am I going to contribute my time for the legal services? No, I'll give a discount if I'm in a partner, but I'm not going to work for free on it because I'm going to spend a huge amount of time, and the partnership's going to get a value. And if you didn't pay me, you'd have to pay somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an important conversation. And again, I'm a broken record here. There are issues that you as the partner are too close to really protect yourself. And that's what you need. That's where the real value of having a professional involved with you to be that objective source of bringing up the difficult issues that need to get addressed.
Yeah, I tell you, Jeff, this is a great topic. I see it all the time. I deal with students that are just getting started in their partnerships, just getting started in their deals. And I'm sorry, I hate to be the guy who pours cold water on the honeymoon, but I've seen it all. I've seen it all, and I just don't want it to happen to them.
Right.
So, hey, what happened with your partner? I mean, not your partner, but your client. How'd that end up? If the operating agreement was silent, to the dilution versus a loan? How did it end up?
We went to arbitration.
Yep.
It was a 3-member panel because of the amount in dispute. And the arbitration lasted for, this is again going back about 8 years or so. It was about an 8 or 10 day arbitration. And we ended up getting a very good result. The client was happy. At the same time, and this is something that it's something that your listeners should know. In arbitration, there is, in general, a tendency for arbitrators to reach a compromise, to split the baby, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they did that in our case. They gave us, our client was very happy with the outcome. It wasn't a 100% win, but it was a big enough win where our client was very happy. And so, yeah, that's how it went.
Okay, so like if that case had gone to court, does the California Limited Liability Act speak to that? Or, does it look at an LLC should, in the event of an additional member contribution, that should be viewed? No,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. That is no. The default law doesn't fill in that particular gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even case law, it's catch as catch can. You never know.
No, it's pretty messy. And that's just one example. I mean, we've had other partner disputes where there were things that could have been avoided with a better agreement. Having a buy-sell provision, I've seen operating agreements where they don't have a buy-sell provision.
Like right of first refusal or that type of thing among members. Now, give me some ideas. Like, let's stay on your client, the arbitration case. What did he see early on that were red flags in the
what did he see early? Well, okay. I'm going to answer your question, and then I want to gross it up a little bit and talk to your listeners a little bit more about some of the other advantages to the strategy, because these are important details, but
that never get discussed.
But to the people who are listening, who haven't been using a joint venture as much or at all as they could, I think it's important for me to explain to them why this is something that they really should be taking a closer look at. And all these details are important, but first we got to get people to say, yeah, you know what, he's right. So and we actually have on our website, if you go to our website, realestateinvestorlaw.com, and you go on the homepage at the top, we have a couple free special reports. One of them is 17 steps to setting up a successful joint venture, and the second is 12 warning signs you're headed for a lawsuit with your partner. And so, because again, I having done this for 40 years, I have noticed certain things come up, and there are usually warning signs at the beginning. So the other warning sign that is the most common indicator that you got a problem is a communication breakdown in any partnership. In the partner you have, your partnership with your spouse, or a joint venture is a business marriage.
Yep.
And so I had a couple clients who were partners, and one of them calls me one day and say, hey, I got a problem. What's the problem? My partner changed the locks on our office door. I can't get in. And I said, why? And he said, did you ask him why? He says, yeah. He says, this is what I had to do to get your attention.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, seriously, that's about as dramatic an illustration as I can give as to how bad it can get. And he said, I email you, I call you, we have a serious problem. We got to talk it through. And the other client was avoiding conflict, which a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
Oh, I know.
So when your communication starts breaking down, and I say starts breaking down, if it already has broken down, by the time they get to the point where they feel they need to change the locks on the door to get your attention, it's not too long before you end up in a lawsuit, and those guys ended up in a big lawsuit.
Yeah.
So the way it starts is you can tell with as little as a change in the tone of the voice. I have a deal another deal I have where I have a partner, and he and I were pretty good buddies. We are good buddies, but something came up in the relationship, and I was a little upset by what happened, and I started to not. When we got on the phone, it got very curt and sort of just more like business and not socializing as much. And he would say, "Are you okay?" And I would say, "No, everything's fine, everything's fine." And then finally, I just stopped myself and said, "You know what? I teach this stuff. I should be able to fix this."
Yeah.
And so I called them up and I said, "You know what? Yeah, there is something we need to talk about." And I told them exactly what I was bugged about and how I was feeling. And I said, "We're not going to change it, but I wanted you to know." And once I did it, it was sort of like getting it out of the way, and it was important for closure. And after I got past it, we were able to rebuild the relationship and move forward. And it was on me that, the thing that, I let it build up inside, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
So you have to, even if there isn't a gajillion dollars at stake, if a relationship is important to you, you just gotta, instead of trying to pretend it's not there, if you and I had a problem, every time that we would talk, there would be this wall between us, so to speak, that would get in the way. And you got to just clear it out.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that about just a tone of voice. I remember back to my insurance days when I owned this insurance firm, and I had a partner, and we were not doing well. Our relationship had really soured. And I'm in a meeting in my office. I have glass walls, and I see him walk in, and his office. He had to walk right past my office to go into his office, and we make eye contact, and I could just tell from the type of eye contact something's not right. Something. Yeah. And an hour later, he drops his resignation on my desk. It's that type of unwritten communication that if you hear it, it's happening. So, don't be shy.
Yeah. And so kill the monster while it's small.
Yeah.
Because once it gets that big, it's really, really hard.
That was the equivalent of locking your partner out, changing the locks. Because that was the only way to get the attention. That's interesting. Wow.
Right. So I always, when I talk about this topic, I bring that up because I don't want to sugarcoat it. And look, we're in real estate. There's risk in everything you do in real estate. Doesn't mean you don't do it, but there are steps that you can take to minimize the risk, like anything else. So circling back to the higher level, here's the reason why everybody should be thinking about joint ventures, because the alternative, if you're going to do a deal with somebody else's money, is syndication. Joint ventures are a fraction of. I can do syndication for you. The cost, the legal fees for a joint venture is a fraction of the money it costs to do a syndication. Number one, it's a lot easier if you screw up the syndication, and it's really easy to screw up the syndication even when you're represented by counsel, because the securities laws are complex and they're not intuitive. And there are a lot of things that you do as an investor where you're not in front of your lawyer. Like you go to events where you're trying to raise money and you say things or do things that violate the securities laws and you don't even know about it.
And not only that, Jeff, let me just add to the fact that you're dealing with the SEC, who doesn't even understand what a Ponzi scheme is when it's served up to them on a golden platter. I mean, you're dealing with government employees trying to rule your life. So, yes.
And the consequences of violating securities laws range from everything from having to give the investors, all your investors, back their money to jail, their criminal sanctions. So I'm not saying never do syndication. I do syndication as well for myself. But I think joint venture is that's why I say it's cheaper, it's easier, it's faster, it's safer. If you and I, and the other impetus to this talk is, so I teach syndication. And when I get in front of the room and teach syndication, I tell people what they need to know, that if you are going to present your deal, if you're going to pitch money, if you need an investor, the securities laws require that you have a pre-existing substantive relationship with the person that you are bringing into your deal. Pre-existing substantive relationship. The definition of pre-existing means that from the point that you sign that purchase contract, that you have a fully executed purchase contract, from that point forward, if you pitch somebody, an investor, for your deal that you didn't know before, then you don't have a pre-existing relationship with them. And
did you see Jillian Sidoti's post on Facebook? Just she posted a clip from a complaint from the SEC where they went after just a small investor. The guy it only raised $500,000, but the SEC clearly defined this particular, just the way you're describing it, and said this guy was in violation, couldn't use the exceptions, and they were coming after him.
Yeah, I got to check that out. Yeah, Jillian's good.
Yeah.
And so so when I teach this, the room's full of we got anywhere from 50 to 250 in the room, and invariably somebody comes up to me after I do this talk about the securities laws with this frantic look on their face, and they say, "Okay, I got a problem. I have hundreds of thousands of dollars that's already hard on my deal, and I'm raising the money. And if you're telling me that I can't talk to somebody I don't already know, that's going to be a huge problem." And I said, well, if you were doing a joint venture, that's not a security, and you could talk to whoever you want. So that is why I want people to understand this as an alternative. And as long as I'm doing, I want to make sure we're defining, we probably should have done at the beginning, what I mean by a joint venture. Because a lot of people have a misconception that in their minds, there's no black and white difference between, if you have multiple people involved in a deal, a joint venture or a syndication. They think it's the same thing. Every syndication is a joint venture, but it's different than a joint venture that in the minds of the SEC. When I say joint venture, a joint venture is anytime you have two or more people involved in a deal where both people are actively engaged, as opposed to just writing you a check, actively engaged. And neither one is relying solely on the efforts of the other to make them a profit, which is the lesson and the holding from the seminal SEC v. Howey case. So, example, and there's another misconception that I've heard some people in front of the room say that anytime you have more than two people in a joint venture, it's automatically a syndication. That's not true.
No, it's not.
I did a deal where it was a residential subdivision development deal. And there were four of us in the deal, and it was a joint venture. There was the guy who found the deal and got the loan. There was a broker who was involved in the design and marketing aspects of the deal. There was the developer, and there was me as the guy who brought the money to the deal. And I also did the legal work, but that was incidental. And so there were four of us who were all actively engaged in the deal, and each one of us played an integral role in ultimately the profit and profitability of the deal. So that was a joint venture. But here's the other important point I want your listeners to get, because this always comes up as well. It's not enough for somebody to say at the beginning, yeah, fine, I will do X. I will handle the asset management, but then they don't. Or it's not enough to just write up an operating agreement that says, I will do whatever, and then you don't. Because if it ever does come under scrutiny, The SEC will do the discovery. They'll realize what happened.
Yeah.
So what we did in our deal is we had a weekly conference call. We were all in separate cities. And we had, one of us was the secretary for those calls, and they would take notes on everything. Take notes on what the issue was, who said what, this, that, and the other. And so we had rock solid evidence of what everybody's involvement was, how frequently, who said what, that we could prove if it ever did come under the magnifying glass, so that we could prove that we were all actively engaged, truly actively engaged. And everybody was equally instrumental in the ultimate profitability of the deal. So
and there's no excuse. There's no excuse anymore. I mean, with things like the service that we're using right now, I mean, it's so simple because this gets recorded, put in the archives, and you've got it for the rest of your life. That's
exactly right. This was before that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So those are the high points that I want to make sure. The other thing is that I believe that if you put together, which I have, a list of the most common problems that hold investors back from doing deals, virtually, I'll say virtually just to be accurate, but I think every problem, every challenge I could come up with, a joint venture could solve that problem. Whether you have bad credit or you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money,
it's just finding those partners.
Yeah. So the right partner, getting a partner, but getting a right partner and setting it up correctly, that will solve your problem.
I'll tell you, Jeff, that's how my owner forum works. Is I identified 4 roadblocks in every deal: proof of funds letter, earnest money deposit, key principal. Right. It's like, then what I do is create situations where I can remove those roadblocks. And you want to know what the creation is, Jeff? I just bring people into the deal who can solve those problems for you.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm helping you. Essentially, what you're describing here is what the owner forum is, where we just solve problems by creating joint ventures with you, and that's it.
Great.
Yeah,
no, that's amazing. I haven't heard of that. It's the forum.
Yeah, the owner forum. That's my coaching, my mentoring program. Where the whole idea is to remove the roadblocks that keep you from doing a deal. And I've identified 4, because whenever I did deals, there was always the 4 same things every single time. These 4 roadblocks, and I decided if I create a program or a vehicle to remove those roadblocks for everybody, then I can get you across the finish line. And one of them is, hey, you've never done a multifamily deal before. Fannie Mae's not going to, let you qualify for a $5 million mortgage. But don't worry, I've got a stable of key principals in my program who will joint venture with you.
Yeah, that's a great program.
Yeah, that's really what it is. It's all just like you're describing. It's a joint venture concept. So
I don't know what you charge for that, but whatever the price is, that's really priced less, because if you find the right partner, that can be not for just one deal. That's a relationship that you can ride your entire career.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what happens. And Jeff, it's just so you know, it's $697 a month, because I'm all about cash flow. So it's beautiful. It's a lot of fun. So, hey, let's I got to wrap this up because we're coming up against time. You mentioned it's realestateinvestorlaw.com.
Right.
Now that's your real estate website, and that's where
our law firm. That's our law firm website.
Oh, I thought it was Lerman Law. Okay, so I should go use the realestateinvestorlaw.com.
Yeah, Lerman Law will get you to the same website, but I go with Real Estate Investor Law because it's easier for people to remember who they are and just put law at the end. I mean, that's my target market. My target market is Real Estate Investor Law, is real estate investors. And our tagline, if you go to our homepage, is we understand we're investors too.
Excellent.
Because what my clients tell me, because I asked them, I was curious, the reason they hire me and the reason they keep using me is because I am an investor and I bring that business and investing experience to my problem solving, and they appreciate that.
You know, I tell you, that is so important because what I do came about because when I was out buying all my properties in different states, I was using great attorneys in those states to, close title, and also, to review my contracts, make sure they're compliant with the state law. But none of the lawyers could tell me if the deal I was doing was a good one. And that is when I realized, geez, there's a market for guys like me out here. And so that's how we did it. So, well, Jeff, hey.
Why don't we partner up our law firms?
No, that would be fun. Yeah, like you get the East Coast, I get the West Coast. So, hey, Jeff, it's great to see you again. It's always a pleasure. You always bring great stuff to the table. I think I got to tell you, Jeff, I think we need to have another podcast show to get more in depth into the joint venture aspect of it, because I think that's a niche that I mean, obviously Jillian's great with syndication, but we got to talk about this joint venturing because that can solve a lot of problems for some of these people.
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Hey, thanks so much, Jeff. It's great to see you, and you'll be hearing from me again.
Sounds good. Great seeing you as always.
Talk to you, Jeff.
Okay.
Bye-bye.